Home. The autumn wind carried the scent of apple orchards through the small town of Millbrook, Vermont, where Sarah Mitchell stood at her mailbox, her hands trembling as she held an envelope postmarked 3 months ago. The handwriting was unmistakably her son's, Private First Class Daniel Mitchell, 22 years old, serving his second deployment in a distant land she could barely pronounce. She didn't open it immediately. Instead, she clutched it to her chest and walked back toward the white farmhouse that had been in her family for 4 generations. The same house where Daniel had learned to walk, where he'd built forts in the living room during snowstorms, where he'd announced, with that determined gleam in his eye, that he wanted to serve his country. Her husband Tom was in the barn, repairing the old tractor they couldn't afford to replace. He looked up when he saw her face and immediately set down his tools. No words were needed. After 30 years of marriage, they could read each other's silences. "From Danny?" he asked softly. She nodded, unable to speak. They sat together on the porch swing, the same swing where they'd rocked Daniel as a baby, where he'd sat nervously before his first prom, where he'd made them promise to stay strong while he was away. Sarah's fingers traced the edges of the envelope, feeling the weight of words not yet read. "Remember when he was 7, Tom said, his voice thick with memory, and he found that injured sparrow in the yard." Sarah smiled through her tears. "He made us drive 40 miles to that wildlife center. Wouldn't rest until he knew it would be okay. That's who he is. That's who he's always been. Wanting to protect, to help, to make things right." With shaking hands, Sarah finally opened the envelope. Tom wrapped his arm around her shoulders as she began to read aloud, her voice breaking and steadying, breaking and steadying. "Dear Mom and Dad, I'm writing this at sunrise. The sky here turns the most incredible shades of orange and pink, colors I wish I could paint for you, though we both know I got Dad's artistic skills, which is to say, none at all. But there's beauty here, even in this difficult place. Beauty in the resilience of people, in small moments of kindness, in the bonds between the soldiers who've become my brothers. I think about home every single day. I think about Mom's apple pie cooling on the kitchen counter. I think about helping Dad with the harvest, the satisfying ache in my muscles after a good day's work. I think about Sunday dinners when Grandma would tell her stories about Grandpa's service in World War II, and I finally understand now what she meant when she said that serving changes you, but it doesn't have to break you. I want you both to know something important, and I need you to really hear this. I'm proud of the choice I made. I know you worry, I'd worry too if I were in your shoes, but this uniform means something to me. It means standing up for people who can't stand up for themselves. It means believing that freedom isn't free, that peace is worth fighting for, that sometimes love for your country means being willing to sacrifice comfort and safety. But here's what I've learned, Mom and Dad. It's not just about the big, grand ideas. It's about the little things. It's about ensuring a child somewhere can go to school without fear. It's about a shopkeeper being able to open his doors in the morning. It's about mothers and fathers getting to tuck their kids in at night, just like you did for me for so many years. I carry you both with me everywhere. I have that photo of us at the lake tucked in my helmet, the one from my last leave where we're all laughing because Dad fell off the dock trying to catch that fish. I have Mom's Street Christopher medal around my neck. And I carry every lesson you ever taught me. Work hard, treat people with dignity, stand up for what's right, and never forget where you come from. I've made some incredible friends here. There's Rodriguez from Texas, who makes us laugh even on the hardest days. There's Chen from California, who dreams of being a teacher when he gets home. There's Jackson from Georgia, who plays guitar and sings songs that make us all think of home. We look out for each other. We're a family, just like you taught me family isn't always about blood, it's about who you'd stand beside in the darkest moments. Sometimes at night, when it's quiet, I think about the future. I think about coming home, about helping Dad expand the farm, maybe teaching kids about agriculture like we always talked about. I think about finding someone to love the way you two love each other, with that steady, unshakable devotion that weathers every storm. I think about having kids of my own someday, teaching them about honor and sacrifice and the grandfather and grandmother who showed me what real strength looks like. If something should happen to me, and Mom, I can hear you telling me not to talk like that, but please, let me say this, I want you to know that I lived a life full of love. Your love, the love of this incredible country, the love of my brothers in arms. And if my service means that somewhere, somehow, someone else gets to live in peace, then it was worth it. But I'm coming home. I promise I'm doing everything I can to come home. We're counting down the days. Just 67 more. I've got them marked on my calendar, and believe me, I'm watching every single one. Tell Grandma I love her. Tell Uncle Mike his hunting stories still make me laugh. Tell Sarah Connor, yes, Mom, that's Sarah Connor from high school, that I still think about that dance where I stepped on her feet the entire time, and maybe when I get back, she'll give me another chance to prove I've learned some rhythm. Take care of each other. Stay strong. Know that every morning when I wake up and every night before I close my eyes, I thank God for giving me you as parents. You made me who I am. Everything good in me, I learned from you. All right again soon. Keep that apple pie recipe ready. All my love. Your son, Daniel. P.S. Dad, I still think the Red Sox have a better shot than your Yankees. Some things never change. Sarah folded the letter carefully, her tears falling freely now. Tom wiped his own eyes with the back of his hand, not bothering to hide his emotion. 67 days, Sarah whispered. This was written 3 months ago. Tom pulled her close. He's coming home. Our boy's coming home. But they both knew the weight of that hope, how it sat heavy and precious in their chests, something to be held onto with both hands but never taken for granted. The town of Millbrook held its breath with the Mitchell family. News traveled fast in small towns, and everyone knew Daniel. He'd bagged groceries at Morrison's Market, volunteered at the fire department, coached Little League every summer. The community wrapped around the Mitchells like a warm blanket, casseroles appeared on their doorstep, neighbors helped with the farm work, and the church held prayer circles every Wednesday. The high school put up a banner, "We're waiting for you, Daniel." Sarah Connor, now Sarah Brewster, married with 2 kids of her own, stopped by one afternoon. She sat with Sarah on that same porch swing and confessed that she'd never forgotten Daniel, that she'd hoped when he returned, maybe they could reconnect. He was always kind, Sarah Brewster said softly. Even when he stepped all over my feet at that dance, he was so genuinely sorry, so sweet about it. That's rare, you know. That kind of genuine goodness. Sarah Mitchell squeezed her hand. He asked about you. In his letter. The younger woman's eyes filled with tears. Really, really. The call came on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after Sarah had received the letter. She was kneading bread dough, her hands working the familiar rhythm that had always calmed her mind, when the doorbell rang. Through the window, she saw the military car in the driveway, and her world tilted on its axis. Tom appeared from somewhere behind her. Later, neither of them would remember where, and they held hands as they walked to the door together, the way they'd walked through every joy and every sorrow of their married life. The officers stood on their porch, their faces solemn, their uniforms crisp. One of them held a folded flag. Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell, we regret to inform you. The words that followed were both exactly what they feared and somehow still impossibly shocking. An IED. Quick, they said, as if that would help. Heroic, they said, as if that could fill the hole being carved through their hearts. He'd pushed another soldier out of the way. Saved his life. That's the kind of man Daniel was, they said. They already knew that. They'd spent 22 years knowing exactly what kind of man Daniel was. The funeral was held on a crisp October day when the Vermont hills blazed with autumn color, Daniel's favorite time of year. The church couldn't hold everyone who came. They spilled out onto the lawn, into the street, people from every corner of Daniel's life gathered to say goodbye. His unit sent representatives, Rodriguez and Chen and Jackson, the men from his letters. They stood at attention with tears streaming down their faces. Rodriguez approached Sarah afterward, his voice rough with grief. Ma'am, I need you to know, Daniel saved my life. Not just the day he died, but every day we served together. He made us better men. He reminded us why we were there, what we were fighting for. When things got dark, Daniel was the light. Chen added, his hands shaking, he talked about you all the time. About the farm, about his dad teaching him to fix tractors, about his mom's apple pie. He made us all want to be better sons, better people. He made us remember what we had to come home to. Jackson, the guitar player, said simply, he was my brother. I would have followed him anywhere. The entire town lined the streets as the procession made its way to the cemetery. Old veterans saluted. Children held flags. People who'd never met Daniel stood with their hands over their hearts because they understood, he'd been standing watch for all of them. At the graveside, as the honor guard folded the flag with precise, reverent movements, Sarah thought about Daniel's letter. About his hope for the future, his dreams of coming home, his belief that his service mattered. The chaplain spoke words meant to comfort, but Sarah barely heard them. She was remembering Daniel at 7, cradling that injured sparrow. Daniel at 15, bringing home a stray dog and asking if they could keep him. Daniel at 20, standing taller in his uniform than he'd ever stood before, nervous and proud and so achingly young. Tom held her as the rifles fired their salute, 3 volleys that echoed across the hills. 21 shots for a young man who'd given everything. When they presented Sarah with the folded flag, she clutched it the way she'd clutched his letter, and she whispered, "I'm so proud of you, baby. So proud." In the weeks that followed, letters arrived from people whose lives Daniel had touched. A teacher from the school he'd helped rebuild overseas. A little girl who drew a picture of the soldier who'd given her a chocolate bar and made her laugh. Soldiers from his unit sharing stories of his kindness, his courage, his unwavering belief in the goodness of people. One letter came from a family in Iraq, translated carefully, full of broken English and overflowing gratitude. Daniel had protected their shop during a difficult time, had learned their names, had asked about their children. He made us feel like people, not problems, they wrote. He gave us hope that peace was possible. Sarah read each letter aloud to Tom in the evenings, sitting on the porch swing where they'd read Daniel's words. She was creating a book of memories, a testament to the ripples of one good life lived with purpose. 6 months after the funeral, on a spring morning when the world was waking up green and new, Sarah walked to the cemetery as she did every Sunday. She brought fresh flowers, daisies, Daniel's favorite, and sat beside his headstone. "Your father finally fixed that tractor," she said, conversing as naturally as if Daniel could hear her. As if he was still the little boy who'd shared every thought with her. "And guess what? Sarah Brewster comes by sometimes. She brings her kids. I think you'd like them, her son has your sense of humor." She paused, tracing the letters carved in granite. Private First Class Daniel Mitchell. Beloved son. Honored soldier. Hero. "I'm still so angry sometimes," she admitted. "Angry that you're here instead of sitting at our dinner table. Angry that the world needed you more than we did. Angry that being proud of you and heartbroken over you can exist in the same breath." A breeze rustled the leaves overhead, and Sarah closed her eyes. "But I understand now what Grandma meant all those years ago. Service did change you, but it didn't break you. And it won't break us either. Your father and I, we're going to honor your memory by living the way you'd want us to, with purpose, with kindness, with that stubborn hope you always carried." She stood, kissed her fingertips, and pressed them to his name. "I love you, Daniel. Every single morning when I wake up and every night before I close my eyes, I thank God for giving me you as my son. Everything good in our lives came from you." As she walked back down the hill toward home, where Tom was waiting with coffee and that steady, unshakable devotion that had weathered this terrible storm, Sarah felt something shift in her chest. The grief would never leave, she understood that now. It would be a companion for the rest of her days. But alongside the grief was something else, gratitude. Gratitude for 22 years with an extraordinary young man. Gratitude for a son who'd lived his values until his last breath. Gratitude for a love that death couldn't diminish. Daniel had come home, just not the way any of them had hoped. But he was home, in the spring flowers pushing through the thawed earth, in the flag flying over the town square, in the stories his brothers in arms would tell their children, in the lives he'd touched and saved and changed forever. And in the hearts of 2 parents who would carry him with them always, their love as eternal as the Vermont hills, as enduring as the values he'd died defending, as powerful as the sacrifice he'd made so that somewhere, somehow, someone else could live in peace. On Sarah's kitchen counter, held in place by a small American flag, was Daniel's letter, creased now from countless readings, tear-stained and precious. Next to it, she'd placed her own letter, one she'd written but would never mail. "Dear Daniel, you're coming home. Not in 67 days like you hoped, but you're here. In every act of kindness in this town. In every young person who looks at your photo and decides to be braver. In every sunset that paints the sky orange and pink. In every moment your father and I choose love over bitterness, hope over despair. You were right. About so many things, my darling boy. Service matters. Sacrifice matters. Standing up for what's right, even when it costs you everything, matters. And you were right about one more thing. I can hear you telling me not to talk like this, but I need to say it anyway. If something happens to us, because someday, something will happen to all of us, I want you to know that we lived a life full of love. Your love. The love of this community you gave so much for. The love of a country that will never, ever forget you. We're proud of you. We'll always be proud of you. And we'll keep that apple pie recipe ready, because someday, somehow, we believe we'll all sit around that table together again. Until then, rest easy, our brave boy. Your watch has ended. We'll take it from here. All our love, forever and always. Mom and Dad. P.S. Your dad still thinks the Yankees are better. Some things never change. Some loves never die. Years would pass. The Mitchell farm would continue, worked by hands that remembered. The town of Millbrook would grow and change, but never forget. And on quiet autumn mornings when the hills blazed with color, people would pause and remember a young man who'd believed that freedom was worth fighting for, that peace was worth dying for, and that love, the deep, abiding love of family, country, and humanity, was the most powerful force on earth. Daniel Mitchell had gone to war believing he could make a difference. He'd made his parents promise to stay strong. He'd marked 67 days on a calendar, counting down to a homecoming that would never come. But his legacy lived on, in every person inspired by his story, in every act of courage echoing his sacrifice, in every family that held each other a little tighter, grateful for one more day together. He had come home after all. Not to a porch swing or an apple pie or his father's tractor. But to something more permanent, to the hearts of everyone who'd loved him, and to the eternal honor of a grateful nation. His story, like all the best love stories, had no real ending. Because love, true love, never dies. It just changes form, rippling outward through time, touching lives he'd never know, in places he'd never see, making the world a little bit better because once, in a small town in Vermont, there lived a young man who believed in something bigger than himself. And that belief, that love, that sacrifice, that was the story that would never end.